you smell it? The oversaturation of action fests in the game markets. Well, I can't smell it that well right now because Resident Evil Revelations is new to me. And it has a feel similar to the old games. It isn't a shoot 'em up or kill everything in sight. It has a sassy wisdom in which Resident Evil games lack these days. It has sufficient pacing. Characters receive some type of character development, whether it be minor or not. And enemies aren't sent to you in rows and rows while you mow them down. And like the other Resident Evil games, has lovely tight corridors and ineffective weapons. The game surprised me. Sticky controls give you vulnerability, much like the old games. Enemies move fast, and you move bone-crunchingly slow, especially when you're trying to blow their head off. Bosses aren't complete pushovers, and I died a few times trying to kill them. The game is very clear about what it's testing about the player, and its accuracy. It's probably that, or the ability to pop a motherfucker under pressure. If you find you have bad accuracy, or you find it hard to shoot these people, the monsters, you're going to run out of ammo and have to stab the enemy to death with your melee attack. Enemies aren't squishy whatsoever. And if you take your time too much, the enemy will give you a beefy with his worm-like tongue until you get so aroused and faint, then it's game over. To summarise without waffling, this game is good. Not excellent, but good. It's a shining example of what Capcom can do with the Resident Evil license.
This sunny and idyllic Mediterranean coast was the site of one of the world's greatest structures. It took a full 11 years to finish constructing the world's first Aquapolis, the floating city of Terra Grigia. A sustainable metropolis operating on a massive solar energy matrix and equipped with the latest green technologies. Never before had solar energy been used to supply power to an entire city. But in 2004, Veltro, a terrorist group opposing the city's development, launched a bioterrorist attack. They not only released a virus, but also several creatures, known as bioorganic weapons, further complicating the situation. This launched one of the worst tragedies the world has ever seen. The FBC, the world's leading counter-bioterror organization operating under the auspices of the US, was called in to direct efforts to contain the attack. The BSAA, a counter-bioterror NGO,
Just let that video run for a little bit. The plot is fairly standard for a game like this. Super terrorists manage to get their grubby little terrorist hands on a supremely sophisticated biological weapon. It seems so unlikely that an underground terrorist group called Veltro get their hands on such a sophisticated biological weapon. I mean, where would they find it? How would they come up with this? Anyway, it's a game, who cares? I'm only looking for the realism, and I digress. Anyway, they unleash it into a city called Terra Grigia. Eventually the city has to be destroyed because recapturing it is too much work, and they destroy it with the sun's rays reflecting off a solar satellite, which is quite creative. Normally games like this just pull a nuke out of their ass. So the game starts with Jill and Parker are sent to find Chris and Jessica, which are presumed to be on the SS Queen Zenobia. Since they lost communication, the story snowballs from there. I won't reveal too much of the plot because it's quite a good one to play through. It's fun and cutscenes aren't so too cringy, so that's a good storyline in itself. You probably already know from my intro, but this game focuses a lot more on plot exploration and puzzles. It's a lot better that way than an action fest shooter, the way Resident Evil games should be. The next thing I'm going to say can be good or bad depending on how you look at it. There is a lot of backtracking in this game, but it feels as though it's relevant and part of the plot rather than padding. Slight spoiler warning, but an example of this is that I have to go back to the deck where I started in the game to retrieve a key from a woman named Dawn. I presume dead. At the start she was tag teamed by these monsters, and on the way to where I saw her getting tag team, you hear a girl or woman speaking, little noises and just little hints that someone was there. I put it on because this is a Resident Evil game, and you know it's made to build tension. And I got to where she was killed, presumably, and she had gone and left a diary behind. I read through it, blah blah blah, how she was hit and shit. And when I put the book down, you can see what happened from the video I just put on then. It's not that much of a chore to have a few passwords you didn't have at the start of the game. Like in the footage, I had another way to go rather than the first bit where I only had a set place to go. Bad example, but anyway, I almost didn't mention this mechanic because it's so minuscule and inconsistent, but you get given a device called Genesis which you can point at stuff and it tells you if something is there, for example ammo. It's pretty useless, and I forgot about it after the first couple of levels. It's only useless because every time you use it you just find ammo, and you can find ammo anywhere in the game world, just sitting out in the open, so it doesn't make much sense to search around for it when you can just get it in the open. There was a few missions where you had to use it, like in Chris's mission, but I didn't after I used it for the mission because the idea is a little redundant. A good idea, just not executed well enough. It would have added a bit more depth if you'd find clues to unlock a weapon or another part of the story or a secret mission. But whatever. A slight grind to have to the gameplay. This maybe just probably happened to me, but I got grappled by one of the monsters close to the start of the game, and I was next to my partner and he just stood there like a lost puppy staring distantly at my everlasting struggle. Would it have been too much to ask for him to ungrapple me? I wouldn't need that much of an animation. Well, on a lighter note, you can upgrade your weapons, but because Resident Evil likes to keep it relevant, upgrades are physical rather than cosmetic. For example, my pistol has a damage and fire rate upgrade. It helps, I suppose, but you forget it's there after a little bit. And also, thing they added is around the world you can find ammunition pouches or something, and they increase the amount of bullets you can carry. It's a nice little touch, I suppose, but it only increases it by a little bit, and once again you forget it's there. And towards the end of the review, bosses. Ah yes, the backbone of any horror game. Not Dark Souls difficulty, but they're not pushovers, and I found that the Dawn boss was a little bit difficult because I found it hard to get back to where my partner was while the Dawn boss was stalking and trying to kill me. That's the only difficulty I found with that. After that, it's really easy to kill her. It was a bit of a stretch as well with the Dawn boss because I wasted a lot of my ammo, but I didn't know that you couldn't kill her before you got to the designated room. So I just had to knife her and she ended up killing me. Another boss is the first one, security guard who's turned into an obese fat pig and has sores on his hands. The bosses are always really quite relevant. I mean, it makes sense that they're there, and sometimes they're a big part of the plot. They're a building block, and sometimes it's good to have in games bosses be building blocks rather than just something that jumps out of you for the point of being a hard challenging boss in the middle of nowhere. A slight spoiler warning once again, but the Dawn boss is Raymond's partner. Raymond is a weird looking anime fellow. His Parker's partner when Terra was nuked or whatever, who got trapped and tag teamed by those monsters who, like I explained in the review earlier, she was tag teamed. I didn't know about this, so it was a nice little twist. And how this is vital is that she holds the key for the village which you need to go to progress the story. So you backtrack and you find out she's a zombie. A plot similar to the other boss. You see tips on the wall about a security guard who has locked himself in somewhere with ammo and food or whatever, and he has the key for the casino. Upon arriving, the security turns out to be a zombie and tries to kill you. Once you've completed this boss, you get the key to the casino. So bosses are building blocks in the plot, and it's good to have something like that, and so bosses aren't just rogue elements of the game, but they prove vital to the story, and it feels necessary to kill these bosses rather than doing so because the game instructed. Now, I'm not professional at reviewing games, but a good game has good characters. Through the plot of this game, there is some character development. I mean, not much, but some. For example, when you play as Chris and Jessica, you find out that Jessica's a little bit jelly of Jill because Jill is Chris's ex-partner, like a work partner, not a sexual partner. So what's the big whoop? So when you play as Chris and Jessica, she drops little hints. It's not that subtle, but it's shown instead of told. At one point she says, "Do you trust me as much as you trust Jill?"
Sorry to bring this up again, but
Bring what up?
do you trust me as much as Jill?
There's no need to compare.
The character development
Trust
in
me
this
both.
game would be regarded as higher if
Besides,
other Resident
trust is built
Evil
through
games hadn't
actions,
provided us
not
with some
words.
background for the characters anyway. Even every team you play has some sort of characterization, even if it's just a total cliche, but it's better to have that than no character development at all. An example being, the two agents you play as, Grinder and Quint, are really cliched. Grinder is a macho American who loves bitches, and Quint is a computer nerd who doesn't know how to talk to bitches. A match made in heaven, really. Like I said earlier, cliche character development is better than no character development at all, like we all know. good character development, add good plot times inspired smooth gameplay, add plausible ending equals a good game. Now I'm just going to give a little montage of some unpredictable moments by the characters that I enjoyed personally. I just thought that they were a little bit of characterization, and it was just nice to see just unpredictable events that characters do, because it relates it more to actual human life, because life isn't predictable. So this is a compilation, if you like.
Quinn, pass me the screwdriver.
Sure, huh? Uh-oh.
Please, don't tell me you dropped it. Okay, where is it?
I know I had it up until this point.
Hold up. I bet you dropped it when you tripped. So, you followed Jessica home. You know where she lives now?
Almost. I had her until the very end, but I lost her near the... Hey! You think I'm a stalker, don't you?
Come in, Jackass here. Give me a sit rep.
Hey there. Any idea where we can find Parker and Jill?
Jessica? Yeah, hold on. Judging by the ship's condition, I believe there's a problem with the engines.
The grotesque monsters in Resident Evil Revelations are pretty standard. They're sort of creative with how disgusting piles of gelatinous mess they are, but there's only a few types and they recycle them through most of the game. Like in the first boss is recycled later in the game when Chris and Jessica head to the casino and they find two in a room. I thought, aren't bosses meant to be unique? Some enemies are fairly creative and are just grotesque to look at, others are recycled a bit. I don't really mind this too much because at least the developers come up with a monster design rather than just giving us humanoids with some grisly looking face features. I almost didn't mention this, but in the game where I played up to, there's actually a riddle in one of the books that you pick up to find the key to start the generators, and it's not that subtle, but at least Capcom actually tried, or the developers, or whoever developed this game. It says, know what I'm talking about? You don't? Geez, you really need to get it in gear. And the door that you need to open to find the key requires a gear that you find, and it not subtle whatsoever, but at least, you know, attention to detail. At least they tried. You know, a lot of the Resident Evil games don't actually have this at all. This game is fairly easy to summarise. It resembles the old Resident Evil games a lot more than say Resident Evil 6 or Operation Raccoon City. I feel as though the developers took their time with this game rather than just shitting it out. I like almost everything about it, other than the slight little grinds I mentioned earlier in the review. If you like old Resident Evil games, then please, this deserves a try. If you are new with Resident Evil, I'd probably advise you to play the other games because this sort of doesn't make sense otherwise, or at least read up the plot on Wikipedia. This game is strong, hard evidence that Capcom can make good Resident Evils, and I'm glad they made this one, with better graphics than on the handheld, and the storyline is quite generic but fun to play through. You can't relate to the characters, but they're likeable in their own way. Sometimes the stuff they say is unpredictable and it's fun to listen to it. All in all, to address the question directly, is it worth the money? Yes. Yes, it is. On Steam, it's about 10 quid, 15 to $20 if you're over in America. I don't know the other currencies. So that's where I think it's definitely worth the money. Get it off Steam. I'm Cal. Thanks for watching.